How to build a life that makes you proud, step by step. There comes a moment in every human life when the noise around you suddenly feels too loud and the voice inside you grows too quiet. A moment when you look at the life you're living and then at the life you once imagined, and the distance between the two feels almost unbearable. Maybe it hits you in the silence of a late night, staring at the ceiling. Maybe it hits you while scrolling past the victories of strangers. Or maybe it arrives quietly, like a whisper carried on the breath of your own dissatisfaction. You were meant for more than this. That whisper isn't a weakness. It isn't a sign that you are failing. That whisper is the first spark of awakening, the same spark that ignited the minds of people who built empires from nothing. Edison heard it when the world called him foolish. Carnegie heard it when he was just a boy working in a factory. Disney heard it when he was laughed out of offices. Lincoln heard it when he lost more elections than most people dare to enter. Every world shaper, every visionary, every creator of extraordinary destinies first heard that whisper, and instead of ignoring it, they listened. Because deep down, every person who has ever transformed their life understood one thing: you cannot build a life you're proud of while silencing the voice that tells you to rise. That voice is the beginning, but answering it, that's where greatness begins to take shape. You see, a proud life is not built in a single moment. It's not delivered by luck, inherited by chance, handed down by circumstance. It is constructed, brick by brick, decision by decision, day after day, often in the dark, long before anyone sees the foundation. And the first step, the step where your transformation truly begins, is claiming ownership of your mind. For centuries, philosophers, sages, and innovators all discovered the same truth in different ways. Your mind is the master key, your invisible workshop, your private kingdom, your greatest force. Napoleon Hill called it the seat of power. The Stoics said it was the only domain you truly control. Modern science agrees. Your life bends in the direction of your dominant thoughts. So the real question is this: who is steering your mind right now? Your fear or your vision? Because one will imprison you, the other will set you free. Most people never build a life they're proud of because they allow their minds to become a battlefield for doubt. They let fear negotiate their future. They let old beliefs, inherited from people who never lived their dreams, dictate the limits of their own potential. They replay failures, magnify flaws, and shrink their ambitions until their life fits comfortably inside the expectations of others. But the ones who rise, the ones who change their fate, they decide, often quietly, often alone, that their mind will be a place where vision has authority, not fear. They train their thoughts the way an athlete trains their body. They challenge every assumption that tells them to settle. They build an inner world so strong that the outer world eventually has no choice but to rearrange itself in response. And make no mistake, it starts small, not with fireworks, not with grand gestures. It begins with a sentence you repeat until you believe it. My life is mine to build. Say it until it shapes the way you walk into a room. Say it until it changes the way you hold your shoulders, until it rewires the way you think about obstacles, not as punishments, but as raw materials for growth. Because once your mind shifts, even slightly, your world begins to follow. The fog lifts, the excuses lose their power. You start catching yourself before speaking words that weaken you. You stop letting old fears vote on new chapters of your life. You begin to see possibilities where you once saw walls. You begin to understand that every great life was once an ordinary life, until someone chose to think differently. A proud life is built first in thought, then in action, and thought is the birthplace of belief. Belief, the quiet, unshakable conviction that you can shape your future, is the engine behind every miracle of human achievement. Hill wrote that belief is the starting point of all achievement, and history supports him. Edison believed the world needed light, even when thousands of failures told him otherwise. Carnegie believed the car could be for the masses, not the elite, even when engineers mocked him. Disney believed he was laughed out of offices. Lincoln believed in unity when the country itself was tearing apart. Every breakthrough began with belief, long before results appeared. And here's the truth most people miss. Belief isn't something you wait to feel. Belief is something you build. You build it every time you choose action over hesitation. Every time you show up on days you don't feel like it. Every time you speak to yourself with the strength you once wished someone else would give you. Belief grows each time you refuse to surrender to the familiar life that calls you back. The life you're proud of begins when you decide you will no longer shrink to fit your past, when you stop negotiating your potential with fear, when you stop waiting for permission to evolve. The moment you realize that no one is coming to rescue you, fix you, motivate you, or convince you, that's the moment you become dangerous. That's the moment you begin to rise. And step by step, your life starts to change, not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you become stronger, clearer, more aligned with the vision that has been waiting inside you. And once belief begins to take root, something extraordinary happens. You start to see your life not as a series of random events, but as a construction site for your future. You begin to notice where the weak beams are, where the cracks run deep, where your habits either support your vision or sabotage it. Clarity arrives, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that reveals, like dawn light slowly spreading across a room. You begin to understand that no architect ever built a magnificent structure without first forming a clear blueprint, and your life is no different. Clarity is the quiet power that turns wandering minds into focused creators. It's what separates the dreamer from the builder. Most people drift because they have allowed the world to hand them their desires pre-packaged. Want this, chase that, be like them, measure your worth by these standards. But the ones who construct a life they're proud of sit with themselves long enough to ask the deeper questions. What do I truly want? What kind of person must I become to live that vision? What would my life look like if I built it with intention instead of impulse? And that level of clarity doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it arrives with a sting. Sometimes clarity is realizing you've been living someone else's dream. Sometimes it's seeing the people you surround yourself with and realizing they may not walk with you into your future. Sometimes clarity is the uncomfortable truth that the life you want is on the other side of habits you're afraid to break. But clarity is liberation, because once you know where you are and where you want to go, the journey becomes not a question of possibility, but a question of discipline. Discipline, the word that sends many running, yet it is the very thing that sets the extraordinary apart. Discipline is not punishment, it is self-respect in motion. It is the physical expression of belief. It is the understanding that the future version of you deserves the effort of the present version of you. Without discipline, even the strongest vision stays trapped in your imagination, like a masterpiece buried beneath dust. Look at any person who has ever built something remarkable. Every one of them had to obey the laws of discipline. Carnegie rose before dawn to study. Edison worked through nights that would break most people. Olympians grind when the world sleeps. Writers, inventors, leaders, they all share one truth. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you could become. And for you, discipline won't show up as some dramatic overhaul. It will appear in small, almost invisible decisions. The moment you choose focus over distraction, the moment you choose commitment over convenience, the moment you say 5 more minutes of work when the old version of you would have quit, the moment you trade temporary pleasure for long-term pride. These small choices are not small at all. These are the bricks, heavy, essential, foundational. Lay enough of them day after day, and one day you look up and realize you've built something solid, something real, something worth being proud of. But the journey doesn't depend on discipline alone, because even the most disciplined mind must eventually move, must express its vision in the world, must take action, not someday, not eventually, now. Action is the proof of desire. Action is the truth behind your words. Action is the force that transforms the intangible into the undeniable. The universe responds not to your intentions, but to your motion. and the people who shape history all understood this. Walt Disney didn't wait to feel ready to build his first studio, he acted. Henry Ford didn't wait for social approval, he acted. The Wright brothers didn't wait for permission to test their inventions, they acted. Every breakthrough in human civilization is the child of action. And here is the part most people misunderstand. You don't take action because you are confident. You become confident because you take action. Action creates clarity. Action creates belief. Action creates momentum. And momentum is a force so powerful that once it starts moving in your favor, your life begins to shift in ways you once thought impossible. Your job is not to wait for the perfect moment. Your job is to move with what you have, where you are, in the direction of the life calling your name. Perfection is a myth that stops more dreams than failure ever will. You don't need perfection, you need movement. You don't need guarantees, you need courage. You don't need every step, you need the next one. But here is the truth no one escapes. As you build, as you grow, as you change, the world around you will test you. Challenges will rise. People will doubt you. Obstacles will appear that make the path seem blocked. And in these moments, the quality of your inner world determines the outcome of your external life. This is where resilience becomes your shield. Resilience, the ability to bend without breaking, to continue without surrendering, to rise even when the world tries to flatten you. Resilience is not something you're born with. It is something you earn moment by refusing to let struggle define you. Every obstacle becomes material. Every hardship becomes training. Every setback becomes a chapter of the very story you will one day be proud to tell. Because the life you want will demand versions of you that your past self has never met, and resilience is what carries you through that evolution. And resilience grows strongest in the moments when you want to stop, when the path feels lonely, when progress feels slow, when doubt slips through the cracks of your confidence. There will be days when the world seems indifferent to your effort, when nothing moves despite everything you've given. But those are the days that sculpt you. Those are the days that forge the steel in your spirit. The people who build lives they are proud of do not succeed because the journey was easy. They succeed because they refuse to back down when it's not. Think of Abraham Lincoln. His failures stacked higher than most people's attempts. Business collapses, heartbreak, loss, public humiliation, political defeats so brutal they would have crushed the will of ordinary men. But resilience allowed him to stand again and again until history eventually bowed in his direction. His legacy was not carved by victories alone, but by the refusal to abandon his vision in the shadow of defeat. And resilience doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's as quiet as getting out of bed when your mind tries to drag you back under. Sometimes it's writing one more page, taking one more step, pushing through one more hour. Sometimes resilience is simply choosing not to quit today. But even as resilience fortifies you, there is another ingredient that elevates your journey: gratitude. Not the surface-level kind, not the forced positivity that avoids reality, but the deep, steady gratitude that keeps your heart anchored while you build. Gratitude shifts your internal weather. It turns fear into perspective, chaos into clarity, pressure into privilege. When you learn to appreciate not just the victories, but also the struggles, your entire story sharpens. You stop seeing obstacles as curses and begin to recognize them as collaborators, shaping you, strengthening you, preparing you. Gratitude helps you understand that the life you are building is not just about the destination, it's about the person you are becoming in the process. Carnegie often spoke of gratitude as the companion of ambition, because when ambition grows without gratitude, it turns into hunger that never ends. But when ambition and gratitude walk side by side, you develop a rare, powerful balance, the drive to move forward and the wisdom to appreciate where you stand. And as you practice gratitude, something unexpected happens. You gain adaptability. You learn to bend without losing your shape, to shift your strategies without abandoning your mission. Life will not always unfold the way you expect. The plan will break, the path will twist, the timing will betray you. But the adaptable mind doesn't panic, it recalibrates. Look at Thomas Edison. His lab caught fire, an entire lifetime of work reduced to ash. People believed it was the end of his genius. But Edison didn't mourn the loss, he saw opportunity. All our mistakes, he said, are burned up. That night, he began again. Adaptability is what allowed him to rise from the flames with even greater innovations, proving that the world cannot break a person who knows how to bend. And as your adaptability becomes part of your nature, you begin to recognize the power of learning, lifelong, relentless learning. The world belongs to those who never stop expanding their mind. Every skill you learn becomes another tool. Every book you read becomes another map. Every failure becomes another teacher. When you commit to learning, you begin accumulating invisible capital, knowledge, insight, understanding that compounds over time. Henry Ford once said, "Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. In other words, learning keeps you alive. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you moving. And when you learn deliberately, not just casually, you gain mastery over the very forces that shape your destiny. Learning reminds you that you are never stuck, never trapped, never finished. Every day is an invitation to evolve, to improve, to refine. And that realization births one of life's most powerful forces, purpose. Purpose is the compass that guides you when the path grows dark. It is the flame that refuses to be extinguished. A life built with purpose does not crumble under pressure, because purpose gives struggle meaning. Purpose gives sacrifice weight. Purpose converts difficulty into direction. But purpose isn't found by waiting, it's revealed through action, through self-discovery, through trial and error, through growth. You find it by stepping into the arena, by trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. Purpose grows as you do, and it sharpens with every challenge you overcome. And once purpose takes root, your life begins to align. Decisions become clearer. Distractions lose their appeal. You begin to measure your days not by comfort, but by progress. You begin to recognize that pride is not born from perfection, but from movement, from becoming someone your past self would look at and whisper, "I'm proud of you." Step by step, piece by piece, you are constructing not just a life, but a legacy. And though the world may not see it yet, foundations are forming beneath your feet. And as this foundation strengthens under you, something begins to shift, subtly at first. Then, unmistakably, you start moving through the world with a different posture, not arrogance, not superiority, but certainty, a quiet inner knowing that you are no longer living by accident, but by intention. This certainty grows every time you make a choice that aligns with your highest self, every time you act with integrity, even when no one is watching, every time you move in the direction of the future you are determined to create. Integrity becomes the invisible architecture of your life. It is the framework that keeps everything stable when storms hit. You cannot build a proud life with weak beams of dishonesty or shortcuts. Those structures collapse under pressure. The people who stand tall decades later, the Lincolns, the Carnegies, the Hills, built their lives on values that did not bend with convenience. And integrity isn't measured in grand moral victories. It's measured in the quiet moments when you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, when you stay loyal to your principles even when no one would know if you abandoned them. Integrity shapes your reputation, but more importantly, it shapes your self-respect. And without self-respect, pride becomes impossible. But as you align your actions with your principles, you will notice another force awakening: courage. Courage does not arrive as a shout, it arrives as a whisper that grows louder each time you listen. Courage is what allows you to step into unfamiliar territory, to embrace risk, to pursue dreams that others call unrealistic. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the authority to say, fear may walk beside me, but it does not lead me. Every person who built a life worth admiring had moments where courage carried them across a threshold. There were moments when Edison stood in the silent lab at night and wondered if he was chasing a fantasy. Moments when Disney wondered if the world would ever see what he saw. Moments when Ford questioned whether he could overcome the skepticism that surrounded him. But courage whispered, "Continue," and they obeyed. As courage grows, it strengthens another vital force: self-trust. Trusting yourself is one of the rarest and most valuable qualities a person can possess. When you trust yourself, you stop asking the world for permission. You stop seeking validation from people who don't understand your vision. You learn to rely on your judgment, your intuition, your internal compass. Self-trust is the quiet confidence that no matter what happens, you will figure it out. And this trust forms a bond that many people never experience, a partnership with your future self. You begin making decisions that benefit the person you're becoming, not just the person you are today. You start speaking to yourself like someone you believe in. You start protecting your energy, your time, your environment with the same seriousness you protect your ambitions. And as self-trust deepens, you uncover one of the most powerful truths of all. Your environment is shaping you far more than you realize. The people you surround yourself with, the voices you consume, the habits you tolerate, these forces mold you silently, daily. You cannot build a proud life while remaining in environments designed for mediocrity. Every architect chooses the land before building the structure, and in the same way, you must choose the environment that nourishes your vision, whether that means surrounding yourself with people who elevate your thinking, or reducing the noise of negativity, or building routines that support your growth. Your environment must become intentional, even if you must build that environment alone at first. Because here's the truth. Greatness often begins in solitude. The early chapters of extraordinary lives are filled with long nights, quiet mornings, private battles, and unseen work. Solitude is not loneliness, it is incubation. During these periods, something else awakens: the ability to endure delayed gratification, the ability to sacrifice momentary comfort for long-term pride. The ability to understand that a life worth being proud of is not built in a rush. It's built piece by piece, season by season, with patience that most people never develop. And patience doesn't mean waiting without action, it means continuing without frustration. It is the wisdom to understand that every seed needs time to grow, every foundation needs time to settle, every vision needs time to mature. It means trusting the timing of your life even when the results haven't yet appeared. And as patience takes root, you begin to feel something deeper: alignment, that rare state where your thoughts, actions, beliefs, and values move in the same direction. Alignment is when you no longer feel like you're fighting yourself. It's when your daily habits support your highest goals. It's when your life stops feeling chaotic and begins to feel purposeful. And once you reach alignment, momentum begins to form. Real momentum, the kind that can change the trajectory of your entire life. The kind that makes doors open, opportunities appear, and confidence rise. Momentum is not magic. It is the reward for consistency. It is the consequence of doing the right things long enough that the universe eventually responds. And in that momentum, you start to feel something you may not have felt in years: pride. Not arrogance, not ego, but a deep, steady pride in the person you're becoming, the effort you're giving, the journey you're walking.
This pride is not loud. It does not need applause. It does not demand recognition. It lives quietly inside you, like a steady flame, warm, grounding, powerful. It comes from knowing that you have faced yourself and chosen growth. It comes from watching your actions finally match your intentions. It comes from realizing that you are no longer living as a passenger, but as the author of your own story. And once that inner pride awakens, something profound shifts in the way you see the world. You begin to understand that you were never meant to simply exist. You were meant to create, contribute, and expand. You realize that your life has been calling you to rise long before you ever answered. And now that you're answering, the path becomes clearer with each step you take. But to maintain this path, you must learn to master one more force: emotional discipline. Not repression, not denial, discipline. The ability to feel without being controlled by what you feel. The ability to respond instead of react. The ability to guide your emotions rather than surrender to their momentum. Emotional discipline is what separates those who crumble under pressure from those who rise because of it. When fear comes, emotional discipline keeps you from running. When anger comes, it keeps you from destroying what you're building. When doubt comes, it reminds you that feelings are not facts. When anxiety comes, it grounds you long enough to take the next right step. And emotional discipline doesn't make you cold, it makes you powerful. It allows you to stay calm in rooms filled with chaos. It allows you to remain focused when everything around you is trying to steal your attention. It allows you to move with logic and wisdom without losing your heart. With emotional discipline comes another essential quality: responsibility. The understanding that your life is ultimately shaped by your decisions, your habits, your actions. Not your circumstances, not your past, not the people around you. Responsibility is where excuses die and growth begins. Hill taught that taking responsibility is the foundation of personal power. When you take responsibility, you stop blaming and start building. You stop reacting and start creating. You stop waiting for someone to save you and start becoming the person who saves yourself. Responsibility shifts your identity from victim to leader, and leaders build lives they're proud of. And as you rise into this reinvention, you begin to understand that growth is not linear. There will be leaps, stalls, breakthroughs, setbacks, days of clarity, days of confusion. The proud life is not built in a perfect upward line. It is built in waves. But every wave moves you forward if you refuse to stop swimming. And with each wave, something powerful forms within you: self-mastery. The ability to govern your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, your actions. The ability to choose who you become. The ability to stand in full ownership of your life. Self-mastery is the quiet crown worn by those who rise above the noise of the world. It is the discipline of kings, the mindset of innovators, the armor of visionaries, and it is earned through consistent, intentional effort. And as self-mastery begins to take shape within you, the world itself starts to respond differently. Not because it has changed, but because you have. You begin to see possibilities where you once saw problems. You begin to recognize patterns where you once only recognized chaos. You begin to trust that the strength you've built inside is greater than any obstacle you face outside. This shift is not imaginary. It is not mystical. It is the natural consequence of inner growth. For when the builder strengthens, the building expands. And as you expand, you awaken a force that separates ordinary lives from extraordinary ones: focus. The ability to direct the full power of your mind toward a single purpose without scattering your energy on distractions. Focus is a superpower in a world addicted to noise. It is what allows you to do in a year what others struggle to do in 10. It is what allows you to create depth in a society obsessed with speed. Every great visionary possessed ruthless focus. Edison shut out the world until his inventions were complete. Carnegie guarded his time with near holy devotion. Hill dedicated decades to studying the principles that shaped the most accomplished minds of his generation. They understood a truth the modern world often forgets. You cannot build a proud life while chasing